He couldn't see what she took as she moved off-screen into the bathroom fast. After a short time of no camera view, she came back from the bathroom. He now saw a full view in the bedroom camera, and she had on her blue bra and matching underwear. It was 15 minutes before 9 when she came out of the bathroom in her underwear, her hair and makeup done. By 5 to 9, she had on one of her black skirts. This skirt was short, ending about 3 inches above her knee. She put on a light blue top over her bra, making her bra seen through. He had seen her in these clothes before, but she used to wear a blue top under her bra to cover it. As she faced the camera, she looked in the mirror behind it. He saw her open the top 4 buttons of her blouse, showing her chest down to where the fancy lace in the middle of her bra was just seen. He thought she would change her clothes again, thinking what she had on was just part of choosing what to wear, but she didn't. He watched as she left the bedroom and went towards the kitchen. Bill switched to the living room camera when she appeared on it, clearly seen in the background as she walked to the phone. When she stood there without picking it up, he understood she was waiting for him to call. He watched her pick up the phone, say a few words to him, and then quickly hang up and make a short call. It was clear her actions were not what he had thought they would be. Deep down, he already knew Linda was going out on purpose without telling him, almost sure to meet someone else. This wasn't clear proof, but trouble was brewing. He watched her move back and forth at the front of the house until she seemed to notice something outside, maybe a knock or a car horn or even a voice. He couldn't tell what it was, but she went to the door, opened it, and left. Bill stopped the video during a short break, the screen showing an empty room. He felt a sharp pain in his belly again and left his computer to grab some tummy tablets. Soon, he could tell she was pressing herself against him. Linda and her pal were blocked by Denise and her date for a bit, but once they moved, he saw Linda copying Denise. In fact, Linda was being touched a lot by the young man, and he saw her push his hands away and say, "Let's take it slow, we have all night." He heard her laugh and go on, "I bet you wish mine were as big as Denise's." "No, I like yours just the way they are." The man started to undo Linda's shirt buttons. Bill hoped she would stop him and make it stop, but she just looked down as he opened her shirt. When it was open, he moved his hands to her again. It was hard to hear, but Bill was sure Linda said, "That feels better." Bill watched, stunned, until he noticed Denise taking off her shirt and then her bra. Now he could see what Denise was so proud of, but they didn't appeal to him. He thought of the overly big features of an online spicy star. This was when Bill paused the video, as the tears now blurred his sight. He pulled out his cloth and tried to dry his eyes, but looking back at the screen, he saw Linda's hand move close to her partner, showing what she wanted. His tears came again. For the next 15 minutes, Bill made the video small and sped it up, watching what happened in the living room and then in the bedrooms. He stopped now and then, making the screen big to watch still pictures like a slideshow, showing him what went on. Bill felt a shock at some things he saw and knew he couldn't watch what happened in his own bedroom. Slowly, he saw enough to know his marriage couldn't last, and he knew if Linda came back while he felt this way, he might not control what he did. He decided to leave the house for both their good, to think and decide what to do next. He wasn't going to leave Linda a note, but then thought she might look for him, call the neighbors, or even the police if he didn't. To stop that, he left a note on the kitchen table. It just said, "Gone for a walk." Bill left the house, forgot to lock the door, and started walking with no real place to go. He hadn't gone far when his sadness and anger at his wife turned into a cold anger and the wish to get back at her somehow. It didn't take long for him to see that the only thing he could do was face Linda and tell her he wanted a divorce. He started to see that a split might come, but he also saw that rushing to get a divorce might not be the best for him. It could mess up his plans for getting back at her. He thought it'd be smarter to look at his choices and think things through before making a move. Then there was the need for health checks for STDs he couldn't ignore. As he walked, his thoughts cleared up, and he quickly saw that rushing for a divorce without knowing his rights and duties was a bad idea. He knew he needed to talk to a lawyer soon. After about a half-hour walk, he found a small kids' park with swings and a grassy space for playing. It was pretty empty, and he saw a paved path with benches under some trees. He quickly chose a bench to sit and think. He started to replay the shocking things caught by his home cameras, knowing he'd have to watch it all, perhaps more than once. He struggled to believe his wife was part of it. As he thought about it, he felt a strong need for revenge grow inside him. Once he started to think about making her pay, he felt a bit calmer. He started to think of ways to make her regret what she did to their marriage. But it didn't take him long to realize she wasn't the only one to blame. Bill had to think about his wife's friend, Denise Grady, and how to make her pay for her big role in this mess. The two men in the videos he saw also needed a taste of his anger, but he hit a snag since he didn't know their names or where they lived. Then there was the bar where his wife found someone else. It seemed right to him that they should also feel some blame. He spent the next half hour figuring out what his revenge could look like. After sitting on the park bench for over an hour and a half, enjoying the warm air and being alone, Bill made some choices. Even though he wanted revenge, he wasn't going to fix the almost 10 years wasted in his marriage. He started to feel a bit better after deciding to get back at them. People say revenge is sweet, and he wanted to see if that was true. Time flew by, and a check of his watch showed he had been away for almost 3 hours. He knew he couldn't stay out much longer without his wife getting suspicious, something he wanted to avoid. He had a rough plan, but there was still a lot he hadn't figured out. He needed to think more and make more choices. Finally, he felt as ready as he ever would be to go back home to face Linda. Bill knew he had to act well, and he wasn't sure he could do it, but he had no other choice except to face her right away with his choice. He stood up and walked home with a clear goal. When Bill got home, he was glad his wife was busy with dinner. She asked him why he took a long walk, but his answers seemed to stop her questions. Even though he was mad inside seeing what she did on the video, he kept cool outside, remembering to stay calm so he wouldn't show he knew what was up. It helped him control his anger. He wasn't just thinking about getting back at her, it was also about looking out for himself, keeping his money and rights safe in case of a divorce. The night went quickly, even with all the bad thoughts running through his head. Just after 9 o'clock, he told Linda he was very tired, maybe from too much walking. It was odd how she acted caring now, checking if he was sick by taking his temperature. If only she had cared that much last Thursday, just before their drive on Sunday to her parents' place near Franklin. They were going for a family meet and dinner with Jim and Patricia Baker, Linda's folks. Bill managed to act like a loving husband. He was sure Linda had no clue about what he knew. Kissing her and being close like usual was hard, but he did it well. Not that they had sexual encounters just yet. He was really anxious about how things would turn out when the time came, as well as how he could get out of doing that action. However, the insignificant actions such as gently touching her or grasping her from behind had been insignificant. His attempt to cross out had been successful. It was the absolute last thing he wanted to do, to engage in sexual activity with her, since he was aware that she would reduce his sentence by maybe 4 years. It was possible that it might become essential in order to allow his ideas to come together. He needed to find a way to buy some time. It is my hope that the crystal will be satisfied with what I have spoken. Those are mine. I am aware that it is something that my mother has frequently expressed a desire for, and I'm confident that I will comply with anything she chooses to do. Continuing, she gave her husband a grin before continuing. When it comes to their spouse's desires, men typically comply with them, don't they, dear? After giving her words some thought, Bill responded by saying, I believe there are probably a few things that a husband will not agree with his wife on. It's just that there are some things that go beyond what any husband can tolerate. It appeared as though Linda did not add any to his response, at least not that he was able to observe. Either during the remainder of the trip, they engaged in a conversation that was relatively unremarkable. He did not have any opportunities to quietly communicate a point to his wife, a point that would, by purpose, attempt to be difficult for her to understand. Staying together in bad times or not seeing other people, right? His mother-in-law pointed right back and answered, yes, that's it, Bill. You need to stand by your partner when they're down, and even if you don't see eye to eye on stuff like politics or faith, you've got to show respect for what they believe. Bill looked at Linda and saw her smile fade before anyone else could chime in. He turned to his father-in-law and asked, "What's your take, Jim? With 45 years together, you two must have hit some rough patches." His father-in-law was a quiet guy who took his time before he spoke, but then he said, "I'm with Patricia on this. Looking at the young couples today, there's a lot of disrespect, things like everyone just thinking about themselves and all the breakups that keep happening. Patricia and I never went through that." Bill was glad for his father-in-law's words, as if he had written them himself. He jumped at the chance to continue, "That's what I was getting at too. I may not be as old as you, but it seems we think alike." He went on, "Why do you think so? Many marriages are falling apart? I read recently that almost half end in divorce." His mother-in-law had been listening and quickly said, "I think it's because the younger ones have no patience and won't work through the small stuff. There's more drug use now, and with all the casinos around, gambling issues too." Bill added quickly, "And then there's sex addiction, like that golfer who had tons of affairs," as she waved her hand dismissively and stated, "That is nothing more than good old-fashioned adultery." It was clear that his mother-in-law did not approve of that addiction very much. And in terms of divorces, this is certainly the most important cause by a significant margin, given the abundance of online dating sites and even specialized websites that cater to those who are interested in cheating on their partners. Considering how frequent it is and how many marriages it is causing to end, it is not surprising. "What do you think about what your mom just said, Linda?" was posed by Bill, who felt that it was the appropriate time to bring Linda back into the discourse. "I believe that she is probably making a valid point, don't you agree?" The sight that Linda had was similar to that of a deer caught in headlights. Nevertheless, she swiftly recovered and remarked, "I'm sure she's right, lovely." It was clear that she had gotten uneasy about the subject matter, and she was able to change the subject almost entirely. During the conversation, it was just before 10 o'clock on Monday morning when Jason Shields entered Bill's office, where he was working. A smile came on his face as he entered the room. However, after taking a single glance at Bill's face, his own smile vanished. "What's up, Bill? To be honest, I was going to inquire about the performance of your monitoring system while you were away from town, but the expression on your face gives the impression that it did not perform very well." Bill's friend had just entered the room and responded when he looked up. "Is it really that simple? I believed I was doing a very good job of concealing my feelings regarding my wife and how I felt about her." After Bill finished speaking, Jason sat down in the chair he had pointed out before. He said, "It could be due to the fact that it was me who entered the room, and you were aware of the question I was going to ask. Alternatively, it's possible that you're simply better at concealing your feelings while you're at home. You have a haunted expression, one that I am all too familiar with, considering I have been in the circumstance you're concerned about. It's possible that it takes one to see one." Bill sat back in his chair, appearing a little more calm as he spoke. Jason waited for Bill to make his statement. As he began, Bill wore a look of resignation on his face. "If I had known it was possible, I would have never believed it. At midnight on Thursday, my girl and her friend, who I've told her I don't like, came home with two young guys from college. I still can't make myself watch all those videos. It took everything I had not to fight her, and I think she doesn't know I know she cheated. I realized I had to get ready before I talked to her about it. I decided to get back at her and her friend, maybe the bar too, the Puma's Den, and I'm not sure who else." Jason looked worried when I talked about getting back at them and quickly said, "What kind of revenge, Bill? I hope you're not thinking about doing something that could hurt someone or break the law because it could cost you your job. At least if people find out, you might find it hard to work in this area again if you have some kind of record." I just smiled and said, "I don't have plans, not yet, for anything bad or violent, if that's what you think. I have an appointment with a lawyer, a friend of mine, for next week. He's busy in court right now. There are other things I'm looking at too. I have some ideas on how to get back, but the years I've lost with her, they're gone for good. I'm getting STD, blood tests on my way home on Wednesday, but if she's got something, I've got it by now. I bet the two of them have done this before, maybe for years. It seems she makes sure her guys wear condoms, but that's no promise she's not caught anything. Nothing I can do will really make up for the hurt she's caused me. All I can plan is to make things as tough as possible for her, letting her think she's fooling me as the first step. I want her to think I'm still deeply in love with her, so when I finally act, she won't see it coming. And we can only hope that she will feel it more. With a grin on his face, Jason remarked, I kind of did the same thing. First, I made sure everything was in order legally, and then I had the divorce papers delivered to her place of employment. It seemed to have the highest possible shock value. Before replying, I said, I haven't thought ahead quite that far, but I'll have to consider that idea myself. Bill gave a long nod before continuing his statement. All I am aware of at this moment is that she has gone so far beyond the acceptable limits that I am unable to imagine any other way out. There is more to it than just cheating. The disrespect and the dishonesty are to blame. As a result of the fact that everything was planned out in advance, they don't even seem to be concerned about the ramifications or the fact that they will be caught. According to Jason and others, that much is certain. I have a feeling that if Linda were aware of the film that I possess, she would immediately pack up your belongings and depart. The expression on Bill's face became solemn as he reflected on the films once more. Yet, all of a sudden, it became brighter, and he inquired, that is enough about the issues. I am facing errors, and in order for me to fix them, it is going to take some time. What happened during your dinner date with your longtime buddy Heidi? I am interested in hearing about it. Has it been successful so far? As soon as Jason spoke, the solemn expression that had been on his face vanished, and it was replaced by a big smile. Nothing could have gone more smoothly. The evening that we spent together was great, and we got along swimmingly with one another. Even now, we share a lot of similarities, and I believe that she took pleasure in spending some time with me. At the very least, it appeared to be the case. You are very welcome, Jason. I was wondering whether you have any intentions to go out with her once more? Jason, have a grin got considerably more extensive on Friday. Once we have finished eating dinner, we are going to go to a play. As a result of our conversation about the potential of attending a Reds game on Saturday afternoon, I could decide to spend the night in Cincinnati by myself. Indeed, it does seem quite intriguing. Jason, I was wondering whether you had any plans to spend the night with Heidi. Jason provided a prompt response, none of that at all, not even close. A room at the Super 8 has already been reserved for me. I believe that we are both interested in taking things at a leisurely pace. Following the actions of my wife, before I get involved in a relationship with another lady, I want to make sure that I have a complete understanding of everything. He shook his head, his face turning serious again. It's sad that what my wife did could make me feel bad about all women. I don't think Heidi is like my ex, but can you really know anyone these days? Bill just nodded, no need for words for that question. Bill stood up and said, let's go for a coffee. I have some work stuff to talk about now you're here. I'll give you back your phone recorder later in the week. I haven't changed the memory chip yet that has the calls from that night. I know there's a call there I need to hear. Jason laughed and said, it's funny you say that. My neighbor just told me he thinks his wife is seeing someone else. I said he could borrow the recorder after you. It's like it's happening to everyone. Bill shook his head and said quietly, now nothing would shock me. I'm done with the video kit too. I'll pack it up, and you can have it after your neighbor uses it. Bill left work early to get the phone recorder and video stuff. He thought Linda might call someone again, but he felt he had enough proof already, no more waiting. By the time Linda got home, he had moved the sound file from the card to his computer and wiped the card. The cards were back in their box and in his car's trunk, along with the 4 cameras he had taken down. He even put back the old clock radio. The house looked just like it did before. Although he had not had the opportunity to listen to the sound file, he had already made the decision to take a day off later in the week in order to examine it and view the complete contents of the video files. At the moment that Linda entered the kitchen, he had already begun to mentally prepare himself for the task at hand. She swiftly moved over to him and gave him a kiss before saying, "I hope you won't mind waiting for dinner because I want to make you something special tonight." He was already there, and she quickly walked over to offer him a warm kiss. "It's a brand new recipe that I got from my mother." Bill was relieved to see that Linda was behaving in such a relaxed manner within their marriage, since it demonstrated to him that she could not possibly be aware of the fact that he was aware of what had occurred in their bed. He smiled to himself, certain that the ideas he was putting together would come as a complete surprise to the person he was working with. It was possible that he would never be able to cause her the distress that he was experiencing, but he was going to give it a shot at some point in the future, following the late lunch that they had together. He informed her that he was still not feeling very well and that he was going to go to bed earlier than usual. Linda went back into monitoring mode as a result of his decision, and she appeared disturbed when she discovered that his temperature was still within normal ranges. When Bill arrived at work the following day, he immediately began a new folder on his computer and gave it the name Mr. Plants. If someone were to chance upon the file, they would most likely believe that it was linked to their work. In contrast, the MRI in this instance was a reference to my vengeance. He had already made up his mind that he would end his charade of a marriage, and he had committed a number of the things that he had planned to do by the end of the month to files in his new folder. He had also come up with a number of potential things that he wanted to do by the end of the month. The very first thing that he did that morning was to give Jason a call and ask him to meet with him in his office whenever he had some spare time. Due to the fact that Jason informed him that he had work to complete on Bill's floor, they decided to schedule a brief meeting for 8:30 today. Almost immediately, Bill presented Jason with the ideas that he had been contemplating and asked for Jason's opinion on the matter. He had the impression that he could rely on Jason to keep what he knew to himself, and as a result, he was not bothered by the request. Bill and Jason talked a lot about Bill's ideas, and Jason gave some new ones. One idea from Jason became the start of Bill's plan to cause trouble at the bar where his wife met her young lover. He felt they deserved it because he believed many marriages were harmed by that place. Jason thought of a way to keep both the women and college guys from going to the bar. Bill joked about wishing for an STD outbreak among the visitors, but knew it wasn't possible. He laughed, but Jason took the idea further, saying they didn't need a real outbreak, just the fear of catching an STD might work. They could make people think there was a problem. They kept talking about it right after Jason left. Bill looked up something on the internet. Soon he called the Montgomery County Health Department. After a short talk, he hung up smiling and got back to work, feeling more eager. He had to leave for a doctor's appointment later. Once there, after checking in, he was shown to a room to wait for his doctor. He said he was there for some blood tests, so the nurse left the door open, saying the doctor would be there soon. While waiting, he heard his doctor talking with another patient outside. "Dr. Nelson, I just came to check if you have my test results." "Yes, but they just arrived. You are suffering from a urinary tract infection of the garden kind. A prescription for some medication will be written up for you by me. Given that it is a sulfa derivative, I need to know whether or not you have any allergies to medications that contain sulfa." "Doctor, I am not aware of any such thing." Following a brief pause, Dr. Nelson gave the following instruction: "Just take this to the pharmacy downstairs, and they will fix you right up." A few seconds later, the physician continued with his explanation: "I feel it is important to point out to you, Bert, that it is very simple for women to have a urinary tract infection, UTI. You need to exercise extreme caution and make use of a condom until the results of your sample come back clear. There is a possibility that you might request that your partner be checked as well if you have just engaged in sexual activity. It didn't occur to me as well. I will bring this up to my wife, to tell you the truth, Bert. While you are leaving, the nurse will provide you with a container for collecting a urine sample, and your wife will be able to drop it off whenever it is convenient for her testing." "All right, many thanks, Dr. Nelson," Bill said, wishing that he had a urinary tract infection, UTI, as he listened to the other person's conclusion to the talk. As a result, he would be able to have a ready-made reason to postpone having sexual relations with his wife for the next 5 minutes while he waited for his appointment with the doctor. In light of what he had heard, Bill conceived a strategy and put it into action that evening. Not long after his wife had returned home from work, within the living room, Bill beckoned her to come in. "Linda, I believe I've got a good idea of why I haven't been feeling well during the time when I had to urinate. I realized that there was some soreness. Last but not least, I went in to talk to Dr. Nelson about it yesterday afternoon." The expression on Linda's face changed to one of concern, and she then asked, "What's wrong, honey?" before she became slightly pale. "Are you sure that this is not a major matter?" Bill instantly responded by waving his hand to dismiss her fear and saying, "There is absolutely no need to be concerned about this, my dear. Dr. Nelson informed me that I have a urinary tract infection of the garden variety. When I went back to see him today, he also provided me with some medication to treat the illness. It is one of the medicine samples that he had. It was sitting right there on his desk when Bill unzipped his briefcase. He got out a plastic blister package that contained 13 huge tablets. One of the pill cavities was already empty, but the other one contained 13 pills. He gave the pack to his wife, and she flipped it to see 2 stickers at the back, one with how to use it and the other with what it is, what it does, and who made it. It was clear he needed to take one each day for 14 days, then check again. When she read all the info, she said, "So no sex for 2 weeks. I talked to the doc about that, and he said women get these bugs easier than men, and passing it back and forth during sex is easy. It could happen even using a condom if you touch it wrong. He said we might both have it, and you should get checked too. He even gave me a bottle for a test, and I can drop it for you if you want. His place is near my work." Bill saw his wife go pale when he talked about sharing the bug, but she was back to normal quick and said, "Okay, I'll do the test. You're okay with taking it there?" Bill pretended to put his bag down to hide a smile because she believed his story. "Yeah, I don't mind," he said. That night, Bill and his wife took their coffee outside to enjoy the sunset. Bill felt his wife had something to say and wondered if she guessed he knew something about what she did when he was away. After a bit, Linda said, "I've decided to stop my birth control pills after this pack. Due to the fact that I have done some calculations, I have determined that my first fertile period will occur during the week following your subsequent vacation to Colorado Springs. Are you comfortable with that? It is possible that I will become pregnant during the first opportunity that we have, but I'm not claiming that it will be likely." Just before he responded, Bill took a swig from his cup of coffee. "It is up to you," he said. "As I have stated to you, a child is something I'd like to have, but I'm fine with any decision you make." Linda was evidently thrilled by his response, and she quickly got up from her seat, which caused her coffee cup to become sufficiently shaken that coffee spilled over the edge and over the table. It had begun. "I appreciate it, Bill." "I couldn't agree more with that response," she said as she hopped onto his lap, resulting in a small wave of coffee from his cup splashing across the surface of the small table that was adjacent to his chair. While Linda was trying to show her husband that she appreciated him with a series of passionate kisses, neither of them noticed that the coffee was spilling. In spite of the fact that Bill was beginning to dread the prospect of even getting this intimate with her, he eventually came to terms with the idea that it would be much too suspicious for him to not want to touch her at all. His strategies for exacting revenge were starting to take shape, and he acknowledged that in order to run a successful campaign, it was sometimes necessary to make some concessions. It was just 5 minutes after 8 o'clock in the morning when Bill Phillips entered the technical services department and beckoned his friend Jason over. Jason was there to accompany him. The grin that was on his face was more than he could contain. "A cup of coffee was given to you, Jason. Would you be willing to give me a few minutes of your time? I have something that I need to tell you." The narrative is quite compelling. After walking into the vacant conference room where they had previously met on a couple of occasions, the two men sat down with their coffees before Bill began his brief story. The room had been the location of their previous meetings, as you are aware. As I have been attempting to find out how to avoid having sex with my cheating wife, I have also been trying to figure out how difficult it is going to be till I get everything planned out. To be honest, I haven't even had the opportunity to speak with my attorney yet. Jason responded with a shake of his head and said, I am aware that you were concerned about it because you were concerned that you would have a difficult time pulling it off. Bill smiled wide and said fast, so, I was at the doc's place yesterday to check for STDs, and I heard him talk to another guy. The guy had a UTI bug, and the doc gave him a note for meds and said he should stay away from sex without protection until he was okay. Hearing that chat gave me a bright idea. After my time, I popped into the drugstore next door and got a bottle of health pills. Then I gave the drug guy a little extra cash, $2, to put 14 pills into a pack like what old folks use. It was a good deal for what I wanted to do. Jason cut in, asking, is that the kind where you push the pill through some thin metal? I have cold stuff like that. Bill nodded and kept going, that's it. So, I came back here and made up some fake labels for it. I even slapped on an end date. It took me 2 minutes online to get what I needed and about 5 minutes to print some nice labels. Bill laughed. Linda fell for it all. I even grabbed a P-test bottle from the clinic. She's so worried she might get what I have. She gave me her sample to take to the doc. I tossed it on my way to work, and tomorrow I'll call her at her job to say she's all clear. Jason shook his head. That's real sly, Bill. I wouldn't have thought of that. Well, I needed a fast plan, Bill said, and hearing that doc talk was like a wish. Then, thinking about my plan for the bar, it didn't take long to come up with this. If it turns out I'm clean, which I think I am, that's a plus. This morning, she brought me my prescription to have with my coffee. Bill laughed once more before continuing. She did this first thing in the morning. It's possible that Linda is even concerned that she may have been the one who spread the infection as a result of her sleazy behavior. If I weren't so concerned that she might make the decision to call the doctor's office herself to inquire about the findings, I would let her a few days to think about it before going back to his office. Bill provided responses to a couple of the queries that were posed by his friend, now more inspired than ever before. His plans to extract some little measure of revenge were coming together, and he would no longer have to worry about how to avoid having sex with Linda. He was becoming more and more inspired daily. If he had been happier, he would have been in the remaining days of the week. Bill approached his work with renewed zeal, content with the fact that he had devised a plan of action for himself regarding how he was going to deal with the problem involving Linda. The Montgomery County Department had sent him the letter that he had anticipated receiving, and it was one that was perfectly suited to his activities. He scanned the letter as well as the envelope on Friday during the lunch hour to complete the task. It arrived in the process of copying the photographs to the folder associated with Mr. Plans on his computer. He had a solid idea of what he was going to do to take his retribution, and he was beginning to get a grasp on it. There was only one feature that was likely to be unfulfilled, and that was a means by which the 2 college students who had visited his house at night could be punished in some way. There was still no means to uncover their names, and after having a conversation with his friend about the matter, Jason had no choice but to agree with his friend that in reality, they were acting in a manner that was typical of young men of their age who were provided a free piece of tail. It was not as if they had gone out of their way to find his wife on purpose. As a matter of fact, the situation was actually the opposite. Over the course of the week, Bill had come to terms with the fact that he would have to confront the damning videos once more. He had to know everything about the files because he needed to use the images for his new plans. Wanting to leave his wife had turned into a bigger plan. He was sure he would have to see the videos and hear the phone calls again. Right after his wife, Linda, went out to shop on Saturday afternoon, Bill went straight to the computer room. He only wanted to listen to the phone calls, not ready to see the videos yet. It took him more than half an hour to go through the calls, up to his last Thursday night call from Colorado. Listening to his talks with his wife felt strange, like they were both reading a script. He could guess every word before it was said. Up until his Thursday night call, nothing in the call seemed odd. After that call ended, he turned the sound up and got tense, feeling the next call would explain what happened. "Hello, Dennis, it's Linda. Did he call? I expected him to call late and delay us." "No, all good. Bill called right on time, always on schedule like a clock." Linda laughed a bit, then said, "I'm ready, you can come get me whenever." "Okay, Linda, I'm near. I'll honk when I'm at your place. Just keep it down, we don't want neighbors peering. One might tell Bill about you picking me up. He must not find out or even doubt anything. I'll be there in about 5 minutes." I would have been there already, but had to stop for some condoms at the drugstore. The words, "It's a good thing you thought of that again," were spoken by Linda with laughter. To tell you the truth, I do not possess any because Bill has never required them. Furthermore, we absolutely cannot rely on those individuals to possess any. They are only capable of thinking with their __. Dennis exclaimed with a chuckle. "I hope I find someone who is a deep thinker," Linda chuckled, and then simply said her goodbyes. While Dennis was listening to his wife talk about him, he was aware of the way in which she had amplified the fury that had been building up inside of him while he listened to their call. A separate duplicate of that chat was created by him before he continued to listen to the talk that was taking place over the phone, and after that one, he found that there was nothing else that he was interested in at all. After he had listened to Linda's call a second time to ensure that his copy of it was accurate, he proceeded to delete all of the remaining recordings from the telephone. It had been more than a week since he had viewed the video evidence of his wife's betrayal, and it was possible that he had become a little complacent with the memories he had of watching brief segments of that surveillance footage. During the time that he was in the presence of his wife, he had been able to respond in a manner that was nearly normal. However, after listening to the audio of her conversation with Dennis, the most negative feelings came back through the remainder of the weekend. He sincerely wished that he would be able to make her feel just as horrible as he was feeling right now. Bill did everything in his power to avoid Linda, mostly by devoting the majority of his daylight hours to working in the yard and spending time in the garage arranging its contents. It was only natural that he would be unable to avoid her when it was time for meals or when it was time to go to bed. To his good fortune, the fact that he had been working throughout the day provided him with a ready-made justification for going straight to bed after he had finished showering. Utilizing the telephone that was located in the garage, he made a call to his sister Sandy on Sunday, even though he had no expectation that Linda would pick up the phone. He was prepared to provide an explanation in the event that she did. He called his sister to ask her to join him for lunch so that they could talk about something with him. She ran a flower shop in a busy part of Miami and was quick to say yes to meeting him at a calm eatery across from her store. She said Monday morning over coffee worked well for her. He was starting his plan to bring trouble to the Pumas in Denver. He aimed to change the letter and its envelope he got from the Montgomery County Health Team. He wanted it to look like an official note from them, saying there was a small outbreak of HIV somehow linked to the bar. His work area ran well with little need for him to be there all the time. This was because he was good at setting things up and keeping them current. When there was a need, his company trusted Bill to fix any issue, so no one checked on him every hour. He soon had a test version of his fake notice, printing one just before his coffee break. He took his rough draft and coffee to meet his friend Jason. The text needed tweaks to sound more official, but Jason thought it was a solid first try. As they had their morning coffee, they worked on polishing it. "I like this part, Bill. You might need to tweak it a bit based on our other talks, but all in all, it looks great," Jason said, then read a line from the made-up health department letter. "A simple look at the last 3 months of HIV reports shows the Montgomery County Health Team that 9 cases, 5 women and 4 men, share one big thing. Each person who got sick had been to the Plumas Den Bar on Indian Ripple Road at 675. As he spoke, Bill wore a grin on his face. "As for me, I found that I enjoyed it. Anyhow, I believe that it is an excellent beginning. It is certainly not within the bounds of the law to fabricate a document such as this one, and I really hope that you won't report me to the authorities. Considering that I have no intention of disclosing this plan to anybody else, it is quite likely that you are the only person who could accomplish that." The offer was met with laughter by the two guys, and Jason finally responded by saying, "I wouldn't dream of it, Bill. You are attempting to do what the majority of men wish they had done when their wife cheated on them. In point of fact, there are undoubtedly a great number of spouses whose husbands have cheated on them who would welcome your efforts as well. You are standing for all of us, whatever gender, who have experienced the pain of having a lover cheat on us." It wasn't until Bill finally left to go back to his office that the two gentlemen began their conversation with each other. After having a fruitful lunch with his sister, he found time in the afternoon to make the adjustments that he and Jason had agreed upon and to print a new sample copy before Bill on that particular day. He recognized that continuing to put off watching the surveillance footage would not make the assignment any simpler to do, so he made plans for another personal day off on Tuesday. He had an appointment with his attorney in the afternoon, and he understood that this would not make the task any easier to complete. He had made the decision that he would create the impression that he was going to leave for work, but then he would go back and spend whatever amount of time was required to deal with the videos. The choice on how he was going to utilize them had already been made, and there was no way for him to avoid watching them, perhaps even several times over the course of Tuesday morning. When, as was intended, Bill was seated at his computer with a cup of coffee nearby, he was unable to escape watching them. He came to the realization that he was procrastinating, attempting to avoid watching the video evidence that he knew was going to give him a great deal of anguish when he viewed it and would severely test his determination that he wouldn't approach his wife until he had done so. In every way, he was prepared. The fact that he had a long overdue appointment with his attorney in the afternoon made him aware of the fact that he needed to get to work on it. At the precise moment that the two couples entered the residence, the video file had already been set to the appropriate time, so he started by looking at what happened in his living room. This time, he only watched his wife, not paying attention to the dark-haired guy. She was with Bill, saw again how his wife's top was opened, and just before they all left the living room, he saw as she took it off and the guy lifted her bra. He then chose the camera in their bedroom and watched it on the full screen. When suddenly, because of the motion sensor, the camera turned on. Linda walked into the room first and was taking off her bra as she entered. The blonde college guy was smiling and opening his shirt. It was clear he was excited under his light brown pants. Bill turned the volume up so he could hear them talk. Linda turned and asked, "Help me take down the covers from the bed. I don't want them all messed up." With his help, the blankets and sheets were quickly on the floor at the end of the bed, and Linda waited as he walked around the bed to her. They started kissing, and Linda ran her hands under his shirt on his back. "You're so hot," he said. They stopped kissing for a moment, and the man looked around, his eyes stopping on a new big photo of Linda and Bill. "Is he your husband?" "He must be. That looks like a new picture of you too." "I guess he just isn't enough for you anymore," he said. As he said this, he turned back to try and kiss Linda. She moved her head so he couldn't kiss her and said, "He's still enough for me. This is just something different. I don't want to hear any more about him." They went back to kissing, only stopping to take off each other's clothes. Bill watched as his wife was fully revealed to this other guy. It was tough to see. Bill saw as his wife reached for her bag, opened it, and took out a bunch of condoms in their packets. He was even able to read the brand name as she placed them on the dresser, which was positioned just a few inches in front of the clock radio. Indeed, that was not merely a clock radio. It appeared to be carved out of stone as it sat there quietly observing her as she tore open one of the packages and proceeded to deliver it over to her sweetheart. "I believe that you are aware of what to do with it at this point. Since I first laid eyes on you in the Pumas, I've had a strong desire to be with you in Denver. In order to get into the middle of the bed, Linda first sat on the edge of the bed and then swung her legs onto it. From this point forward, the only sounds that Bill heard were a few squeaks coming from the bed, a number of masculine grunts, and a great deal of incomprehensible sounds that his wife made as she neared or reached the apex of her performance. Following the completion of a few minutes of conventional missionary sex, his wife silently pushed her beloved up with her hands. She instantly turned around and got down on her knees as soon as he had withdrawn from her from the conversation. Bill was not even close to being as thrilled. During the same time that he was experiencing an increase in his anger, he was also able to sense that his love for his wife was progressively diminishing. After a couple of minutes had passed with Linda's actions making it very clear that she was eager to engage in sexual activity, Dennis got out of bed, reached for one of the condoms, and quickly positioned it in the appropriate position. They were quickly putting in a lot of effort. It didn't take long for the two of them to have their climaxes once more, and this time, Linda was the one who finished ahead of Dennis and crossed the finish line. She fell to the side of him, taking long breaths as she fainted. Denise Grady and her partner, who had black hair, entered the room around 1 minute after the initial arrival. "I assume we're not disrupting anything?" Denise asked. "Damn it," Dennis replied with a throaty laugh. He then continued his statement. "It is unfortunate that you have completed everything we were interested in watching." Due to the fact that Linda's cheeks had taken on a pinkish hue, Bill was able to determine that she was feeling at least a little bit embarrassed by the scenario. In response to Denise, she did not offer any kind of response. "I had the impression that we had reached an agreement to knock on the door before entering the bedroom if we had finished before everyone else. That is what I would have done." Bill had the impression that his wife was a little bit irritated with her acquaintance of the same name. He watched as the two men smiled at each other, then Dennis stood up from the bed and went to stand next to Denise. Linda also got up, and the man who came with Denise walked to her and put his arm around her waist. "Come down and join us when you're done, Linda. We don't mind if you watch, right?" Bill saw Dennis put his hand on her shoulder, and they all left the room together. Bill had seen parts of this video before, so seeing his wife and the student with dark hair in his bedroom was not a surprise. Now, watching the video at normal speed, he saw his wife with her new friend. He kept watching as his wife leaned into the man with dark, thick hair in front of her. Linda quickly got on the bed on her knees, looking back at Bill's camera and her new friend. "Come on, Eric, it's Earl." Earl jumped in and got started right away. They did not talk much as they lay on the bed together. "Come on, Earl, let's see if they are done." "Denise wants me to watch her." Linda laughed and reached out to pull Earl up. They both walked out of the room, and Bill made the video on the master bedroom smaller. He saw action on the guest room camera and made it big again. Bill kept watching as his wife and Earl knocked and walked into the room. "We're here, Denise." He saw his wife hang back a bit, maybe feeling shy because she looked more red-faced than when she left the other room. Denise looked at Linda and said, "I hope Earl isn't too tired. I think I can keep Dennis from finishing too soon if Earl wants to join." They all got into it, and Bill watched for a few more minutes until everyone in the bed was done. As a result of the fact that he had a close relationship with one of the individuals present in the room and had met another individual on multiple occasions, the entire situation appeared to be much more genuine than anything he had witnessed in a hot film. There were a few exercises left on the video that were not particularly noteworthy. The sexual demands appeared to have been completely satisfied for each and every one of them, and the discourse had consequently become rather dull. Dennis and Earl started putting on their clothes in the guest room, while Linda and Dennis went back to the main bedroom and quickly dressed themselves. Within the span of 5 minutes, the two men exited the house through the front door, allowing themselves to leave while Linda and Dennis observed from the living room floor. "Linda, allow me to assist you in cleaning up the mess. We are able to strip the mattresses, and after that, you may either throw the sheets and pillowcases into the washing machine, flush the condoms and other items, and examine the wastebaskets to ensure that they are clean. The condoms that are still available will be mine to take. There is no doubt in my mind that you do not want Bill to discover them." Dennis chuckled to himself, that throaty laugh that Bill was starting to take a complete and utter dislike to. The two ladies rapidly stripped and remade the beds, and Bill could see that Denise removed the wastebaskets for a period of time before returning them to the two bedrooms. Bill watched as the two women completed their tasks. Neither of the bedrooms appeared to have changed in the slightest from how they had always appeared when they were done. After some time had passed, he checked the timestamp and saw that it had taken them fewer than 10 minutes to restore the house to its normal state. Be that as it may, he would never be able to look at any of the rooms in the same way again. After the final of the 4 cameras had finally turned off, Bill flipped the image from their bedroom until the video was once again visible. He froze it just as his wife was reaching up to turn off the lamp by the bedside. She was getting ready to go to sleep. After hastily consulting the help screen, at the same time he pushed the function key that would save the frozen scene as a distinct image file that contained all that he had observed throughout the process. At some point in the future, this particular image would become one of the ones that plagued him the most. Bill spent an hour making new files from the videos he had from that night. 2 videos showed what happened in the guest room with Dennis and Earl, and then Dennis alone before Linda and Earl came in. A 3rd video caught what went on after Linda and Earl joined in until everyone stopped. He knew he had to learn more about fixing that 3rd video, so he planned to look into how to edit videos better. When he was done with those 3, he made 2 more videos of Linda, each with one of the students. He had more editing and picture taking to do, but he had to meet his lawyer in an hour. He didn't want to miss that. After watching the full videos, Bill had meetings with his boss on Wednesday morning. He only got to see his friend Jason for a quick lunch. He found Jason in the cafeteria just starting to eat. "I'm sorry I couldn't chat earlier, Jason. I'm sorting something out at work and had meetings all morning. I'll tell you when I can, but they've asked me to keep quiet for now. They've been really good to me, letting me take time off when I need it, so I don't want to let them down," Bill explained. Jason looked at Bill oddly but responded, "I get what you're saying, Bill." He waited until Bill was eating his sandwich to ask, "So, how did it go with your lawyer? Did you get the answers you needed?"